Let's take a little detour to Earth. During 1988, this little kid with an awesome mixtape is Peter Quill. And his terminally ill mom, Meredith Quill, is probably on her last few breaths.
You're so like your daddy.
Meredith gives him a present and tells him to open it when she's gone. She offers her hand to Peter, but the kid is so shocked, he recoils away until she flatlines. Poor little Peter, left to loudly regret it. He runs away going outside. Then an alien starship beams him in. Let's move a lot of years into the future, where this masked thief known as Star-Lord stalks some hidden temple in the rain. Turns out this man's Peter Quill, but older. He puts on his headset and blasts "Come and Get Ya Love" as he treks through the rat-infested ruins of this temple. He vibes his way to a shiny artifact. Once he makes it in the room, he magnetizes out the artifact, but he has some unwanted guests. They hold him at gunpoint and he tries to wow them because he's the legendary Star-Lord, but nobody asked.
Star-Lord, man.
So he obliterates the lot of them. He steals back the artifact and then makes his daring escape. Outside, he faces some more guards, but he's just too quick for him. So he books his rocky escape into the stars. Barit, the stowaway girl, accidentally answers a call he didn't want. It's Yondu. He's the leader of the Ravagers and somewhat father figure to Quill.
We're Ravagers!
He wants that artifact Peter just picked up, but Quill decides that he's gonna keep the orb. Yondu's pissed, so he puts that bounty on him, and he wants him alive so he could kill him himself. Somewhere else, we're taken to the ship known as the Dark Aster.
Because I do not forgive your people.
It's a warship commanded by Ronan the Accuser, leader of an alien race known as the Kree. He then executes probably the first of many in his warpath of conquests. Nebula notifies him that Korath, the guard who tried to blast Quill earlier, has returned. He reports the outlaw known as Star-Lord stole the orb, and Ronan has orders from a grimacing warlord to retrieve the orb, so Ronan sends Nebula to Xandar to retrieve it for him. Too bad Gamora interjects that she knows Xandar better, so Ronan changes his mind and sends Gamora instead. At planet Xandar,
What a bunch of losers.
we're taken to Rocket, a raccoon berating everyone in Xandar, including his familiar-looking old man. He's joined by his partner, Groot, who looks like a living tree. Rocket scans people for potential bounties and spots Quill with 40,000 units on his head. Quill goes to the broker to try and pawn the orb.
Where's Yondu?
But Quill mentions Ronan's after it, so he tells him to flock off. He says Ronan's out to wipe Xandar's culture, which includes him, so Quill's kicked out of the shop. Outside, Gamora catches him, and he makes his introduction. That's until Gamora does a cheap shot and steals the orb. Peter catches up and the two exchange blows, until the final blow is about to be struck by Gamora when suddenly Rocket swoops in and Groot tangles Gamora. At the sight of this mess, Quill sees his chance, takes the orb, and runs for it. Gamora's accuracy is totally stellar, as she throws a knife and hits that orb off his hand. She grabs it and runs off with it until Quill body slams her. That's until Gamora comes out on top and Quill straps a jetpack to her so he has the orb. Groot and Rocket catch themselves a trophy by bagging Quill, but Gamora comes back with a sword, slices Groot into tofu chops, and opens the bag. Surprise shock attack. Quill runs with the orb, but Rocket blasts him with a massive shock and Quill stops on his feet. Well, they're all stopped on their feet as the Nova Corps cops arrive.
Hey! That isn't Star Prince.
And book him for the big house. At the Nova headquarters, Nova Prime expresses her distaste that Ronan is slaughtering a lot of Nova's outposts and people. Then it comes to her attention that Gamora, daughter of the Mad Titan working for Ronan, has been captured. She's been trained to be totally lethal. Next on the mugshot is Rocket, a freak of nature born from experimental science. Then Groot, Rocket's personal muscle.
What a bunch of a-holes.
And last but not least, Peter. He flips them off and they're set to be transported to the Kiln, a high-security prison. During their transport, Rocket won't stop blabbering about how he's busted out of 22 prisons. Then Quill calls him a raccoon, which is an Earth word, so he doesn't know it. Quill wants to know what's so special about this thing, since there's a sinister aura behind it. But Gamora doesn't want to talk to a petty thief. Rocket calls her out as the daughter of the Mad Titan, so she spills that she just wants the orb to sell it. Groot, of course, keeps saying, "I'm Groot," which leaves Quill confused. Rocket explains that he's only limited to "I am Groot," and specifically in that order. Suddenly, the Chain Gang pass by Impound, where Quill gets angered by some big blue oaf messing around with his headphones. Quill gets shocked, but he's hooked on a feeling of having his headphones back, so he's shocked some more. Later, he's bathed in spaghetti sauce and transported to his cell. Soon, the four menaces to society get their sleeping bags and they arrive at the cafeteria. Let's just say it's a tough crowd, cause everyone here seems to be telling Gamora to KYS thanks to her warpath reputation. Another big blue oaf appears and threatens Quill to drop the soap, but Groot picks his nose, along with his liver, spleen, and probably every other vital organ, unless they all leave him alone. Gamora is berated up to her cell, and Quill is left to sleep in a sausage fest. His sleep gets interrupted by Gamora being dragged away to be shanked at the showers. They're about to cut her open like a clam. But Drax the Destroyer intervenes, saying it's his prize to end Gamora, not anyone else's. His wife and daughter were killed by Ronan, and he just laughed it off. While they're distracted, Gamora kicks some of the men down and holds Drax at knife point. She says that she's not affiliated with Ronan or the Mad Titan, and she actually offers a way to him. Drax doesn't buy it, and just when he's about to gut her like a Christmas turkey, Quill steps in to stop him. He tells Drax that he'll be coming for Gamora, so if he wants Ronan's head, he should use Gamora as bait.
I'm saying is, you want to keep her alive.
Convinced, Drax lets her go, but keeps a favorite knife of one of the inmates. Quill tells Gamora he only saved her so that he could sell the orb, and that their getaway ticket lies with Rocket. The mutant rodent says they're busting out, but he's taking Quill to Yondu for the bounty. Quill's asking how much is the orb worth to Gamora's buyer, and she says 4 billion credits. They decide to split it. Speaking of splitting, Ronan's about to get his tushy split in half because the Mad Titan's daughter is behind Nova bars. He's called to Sanctuary, where he tries to gaslight that it was Gamora's fault for losing to an Earthling. Then he argues with one of the overseers to lower his tone, but he swivels his head. Ronan wants this matter to be taken seriously, but the Mad Titan Thanos claims that he doesn't take him seriously. Politics don't mean anything to him because he either gets the orb or Ronan turns into a red fart cloud. After that threat, they make their way to the prison. At the prison, the chain gang plans their escape. Rocket needs a guard security band, some dude's prosthetic leg, and a breaker battery. The last part's really hard to get as it's in the middle of prison. It's heavily guarded, and it's 20 feet in the air. They need to get it oh, nope, Groot already took it. So it's time to split up, gang. The prison goes into sicko mode and Groot gets surrounded by drones. One of the guards tells him to drop that thing or they're gonna open fire. He opens his mouth and screams the only thing he knows, so they let lead fly. For a tree, Groot's very tanky and easily takes out the drones. Rocket reunites with Groot, but says he can't work without some guns. It's prison riot time, so Drax thumps the guards and passes Rocket a gun or two.
Oh, yeah.
The furry goes mad and shoots every drone in sight. Quill tries to negotiate for the prosthetic leg, and then Gamora finds a candidate for an armband donation. Quill gets the leg, and Gamora passes the security band to Rocket. He hotwires it to the battery, and he and Groot make their way to the Watchtower. Quill and Gamora follow suit. Then Drax saves Quill and he joins the bandwagon. They make it to the Watchtower, and Quill says Drax made a deal with him to keep him around until Ronan's head is his. Quill then gives the leg to Rocket, which he laughs about because it's only for a cheap sadistic laugh. The security's getting beefy, so Rocket lets his plan come into fruition, while Gamora irks at the fact that her life might end surrounded by the galaxy's biggest brainlets. Soldiers fire on the Watchtower, so Rocket turns off gravity and the console commands. He also detaches the Watchtower's head and turns the drones into makeshift boosters, which they use as their getaway vehicle.
That was a pretty good plan.
They crash into the item depository where they collect their belongings, but Quill sees something missing. Now it's not the orb, but headphones. He orders Gamora to take the orb and go ahead to his ship, while he lays down some hate. The ship is outside, and Rocket plans to ditch him, but they soon learn that the orb is still with Quill. Quill sees the blue oaf with the headphones and bonks him. Drax sees him fly through and they let him in, only to be sorely disappointed that he went back for an ancient cassette player. Their ship flies off and Rocket is already scraping it for weapon parts. He was about to scrap Quill's unopened present if he didn't stop him too. Quill then talks to Gamora to get her to spill the beans on what the orb really is, but even she doesn't know. Drax wants to use it against Ronan, but this turns into a lethal disagreement between him and Gamora. They're stuck together until Drax gets the head of Ronan and the rest of them get their money.
And Quill, your ship is filthy.
Back at the prison, Ronan has overrun that prison, and despite their brutal interrogations, they still don't know where the chain gang and the orb went. Their work's done here, so time to wipe everything. At Xandar, Yondu visits the broker and is asking about the orb and who are its potential sellers. The broker doesn't give it up, so he threatens them with a whistle-controlled arrow.
Now, who again is this buyer of yours?
Meanwhile, Quill and the gang are approaching nowhere. The severed head of an ancient celestial being turned into a planet. Nowadays, it's a mining colony for rare resources, which are mostly flesh and brain matter. The chain gang arrives at a bar, where they're expected to wait for the buyer's representative. Inside is an animal fight club to bet on, and Groot, Rocket, and Drax all get drunk.
Now let's put more of this liquid into our body.
Outside, Gamora tells the story of how Thanos forcibly adopted her as a daughter and mercilessly trained her to be a weapon. Gamora's tired of Thanos destroying planets, so she's defected. On Quill's side, he's risked his life to get the cassette player back because it was his mother's, and she felt it was songs she loved. Gamora asks what you do with it, and Quill replies, well, you either listen to it or dance. Gamora gives off Tsundere vibes, as she doesn't dance.
It's the greatest thing there is.
But Quill tells her the legend of, Kevin Bacon and Footloose. Then he slowly lets Gamora listen to his headphones. Quill tries to lean in for a smooch, but the only thing smooching is his neck with her blades. Inside the bar, Groot, Drax, and Rocket all get into a bar fight. Rocket gets into a fit about how his feelings got hurt, and then Quill quenches him down. He tells him that the reason they're friendless is because the moment they meet someone, they're already attempting to tear him into shreds. Drax storms off because they haven't achieved anything to cut Ronan down. Soon, Karina pulls up at the after party to pick up Gamora and co. for her master, the buyer. Welcome to the creepy collection of Tanaleer Tivan, the collector. The collector displays his formalities, displays his rude interest to collect Groot, then they give him the orb. Tivan talks about during the creation of the universe, and that the essentials were divided into 6 concentrated ingots. These are obscenely powerful relics that only obscenely powerful beings can wield. Each stone has its own distinct power and attribute.
There's a little pee coming out of me right now.
That's all sweet and dandy, but Rocket wants to get paid. Tivan was about to pay him, but Karina touches the stone and it causes a catastrophic explosion in the shop. Gamora changes her mind after witnessing the utter destruction caused by a single touch, so she wants to give it back to the Nova Corps. Rocket either wants to get paid or just hand it over to Ronan, but Quill and Gamora refuse and they want to save the galaxy because they're all idiots who live in it.
What has the galaxy ever done for you?
Quill wants to save it or just sell it. Gamora bails, but a fleet of ships arrive. It's Ronan, and it turns out Drax called him over to fight and get his revenge. Meanwhile, the Ravagers also arrive. Gamora escapes in a pod while Ronan beats Drax down. Groot, Rocket, and Quill try to help out Gamora from her pursuers. Drax is swiftly defeated, while Gamora goes out of nowhere and gets blasted by her robotic sister, Nebula. She gets the orb and leaves. Rocket says the pods aren't designed for outer space, and that there's nothing to do for Gamora, so Quill radios Yondu to come and get him. Then he goes to save Gamora by giving her his mask. They get picked up by Yondu and make it. Groot saves Drax from poisoning, and he also apologizes to Rocket for his idiotic stunt. Rocket plans to make a run for it, but Groot wants to save Quill and Gamora. At the Dark Aster, Ronan reports his possession of the orb to Thanos, but he betrays him by possessing the Power Stone. Nebula also pledges allegiance to him. At the Ravager's ship, Yondu beats up Quill for his betrayal, but together with Gamora, he convinces Yondu and the Ravagers to go after the Stone and Ronan. Soon Rocket, Groot, and Drax reunite with Quill and Gamora. They hatch a plan, or 12% of a plan, so Quill needs their help for a plan. He busts out the heroic leader speech.
Usually life takes more than it gives, but not today.
But Rocket says they're basically going on the suicide of missions. They eventually all turn around and agree to help Quill. During their planning, their main objective is to not let Ronan get to the ground and touch ground to disintegrate all life on Xandar. The specifics are disguised to the rest of the Ravagers, and the Chain Gang are given devices to contain the stone if they ever shall encounter it. Yondu gravely reminds him that at the end of all of this, he better get the stone or the Chain Gang will perish. Quill actually contracts one of the officers to help him, and that officer debriefs with Nova Prime, warning them that Ronan is coming to Xandar to decimate them all with the Power Stone. The Dark Aster approaches Xandar's atmosphere, and the Ravagers hold it off with a fleet of ships. Dark Aster swarms back with its own fleet, but the Chain Gang sneaks through behind the ship. Nova Corps sees the battle and evacuates the city. The Ravagers and the Kree ships go into a full sky war. Yondu goes down, but vows to see Quill at the end of all of it. Soon Nova Corps backs him up with a fleet of warships, so Quill and his team take the dive inside the Dark Aster. Now, the Nova ships interlock, and they all form a giant energy blockade, preventing the Dark Aster from reaching the ground. In the Dark Aster, Groot, Gamora, Drax, and Quill thread inside the warship. Groot lights up the place, and Drax makes a sappy speech about friends. Nebula interrupts this speech, but she's interrupted by a rocket that Drax fires into her. At the ground, Yondu's surrounded by Kree warriors. Then he's surrounded by lifeless Kree warriors. thanks to that whistling arrow. Back at the warship, Gamora's left no choice but to battle her sister, while Ronan grows tired of the resistance and orders the Necrocraft pilots to kamikaze on the city and rain some terror. Thankfully, Rocket and the Ravagers defend the city. Drax, Groot, and Quill are left to fight against Ronan's security. Everyone in every corner of the city is invested in this battle. Groot clears the way of Ronan's soldiers, but soon he uses the Power Stone to destroy the Nova ship barricade. The Dark Aster breach through. Time is of the essence, as Gamora needs to open the door, so she just defeats Nebula but offers her a hand.
I know you're both crazy.
Nebula straight refuses, cutting her hand off and hijacking a Ravager ship. The doors open and all the Chain Gang but Rocket make it through the bridge. Quill fires Ronan's devastating weapon at Ronan, but he lives. Drax charges, but he's on a chokehold until Rocket rams his ship through the bridge. This makes the Dark Aster lose control and plummet out of the sky. The ship is breaking and exploding apart. So the Chain Gang gather around Groot as he makes a protective barrier while that Dark Aster crashes into Xandar. Inside the ball of wood, Rocket tearfully begs Groot not to sacrifice himself, but Groot insists. The Dark Aster crashes hard into the Nova City. Only ruins, broken metal and concrete can be seen as the Chain Gang emerges from the ashes of the decimated warship. The citizens soon gather around the wreckage.
I called him an idiot.
But something sinister emerges. It's Ronan. Rocket's furious Ronan killed Groot, but he's swiftly swept away and mockingly calls the Chain Gang the Guardians of the Galaxy. Good luck with that name sticking. Ronan makes his big evil villain speech to the people of Xandar, while Rocket salvages what he can of the weapon he has left. Just as Ronan was about to incinerate all life on Xandar, he gets distracted by Quill dancing. Well, it's dance-off time, and Ronan's heavily bewildered by Quill's pelvic display. Bust a groove, Ronan, because it's all a big distraction until Rocket and Drax fire their weapons and shatter Ronan's hammer. The stone flies free and Quill grabs it first. Amazingly, he survives and takes Gamora's hand. Drax joins, then finally Rocket. Ronan couldn't believe it, so he attacks him, but Peter vanquishes him with the stone. Gamora seals the stone and Yondu comes by to get the stone. Well, Peter gives him the stone and all the Ravagers leave. Peter reveals he did the classic switcheroo, while Rocket grieves for Groot. Much later, they discover that Peter is only half human. The other half? We'll watch the next movie. The Nova Corps express their gratitude to the Guardians of the Galaxy by fixing up their ship. Peter bids his goodbyes to Nova Corps, and aboard his ship, he finally opens the letter and the gift that his mom left him all those years ago. Turns out his mom was the one who gave him the nickname Star-Lord. Inside the present is a sequel to the awesome mixtape he already has. He plays some copyrighted music, and Yondu on the other ship opens the ball and it contains a troll toy. He chuckles at his adopted son's little prank. The real stone is in a Nova vault. Back at their ship, Groot is already growing back, and they set way to the sweet tunes of Jackson 5. Blast those mixtapes, because that's it for Guardians of the Galaxy. Thanks for sticking with us to the end, guys. What'd you think about this out of this world movie? Let us know in the comments below with the hashtag Cinema Recap. This was Guardians of the Galaxy by Marvel Studios, starring Chris Pratt, Vin Diesel, and Dave Bautista. Until the next awesome mixtape, smell you later.